Hello and welcome to a new episode of TC Vision Know How. Today we show the initial load and real-time replication of DB2 CUS to SQL Azure. We start with a DB2 table with about 50,000 records, which we will load and synchronize to SQL Azure. Our demo environment consists of CUS 2.1 with DB2 and SQL Azure in the Microsoft Cloud. Of course, TC Vision is installed and connected. In the TC Vision control board we can see two nodes, the mainframe and a Windows server for the connection to Microsoft Azure. We start with the creation of the metadata, which is necessary for any synchronization and is used in all procedures. We create objects for the input, the output, and the replication. Our output should be in the Microsoft Azure. We import from the catalog tables of the DB2 server on the mainframe. We choose the proper DB2 and then our table. Of course, multiple tables could be imported at once. By default, the schema of the input table is recommended for the output table. We change it to BOS. Then we complete the import process. We can see the input table, the output table, and the one-to-one connection between the corresponding fields. Now we create the output table in SQL Azure. The recommended DDL can be changed if necessary. Now we create a load task. We call it initial send and create it in a folder called to Azure. We'd like to execute a bulk transfer. We select the database and could choose the tables that should be transferred. Instead, we instruct TC Vision to transfer all tables defined in the repository. We send the data to another node for further processing. The data is not processed before being sent in order to save CPU cycles on the mainframe. We choose the remote node and enter the name of the receiving script. If it doesn't exist yet, it can be created with a click on the Edit button. In the receiver script, we specify that the data comes from a script in another node, but we don't specify the data type. The output should be written fully processed in the target that is defined in the metadata repository. In our case, this is Microsoft Azure. We close the window of the receiver script. The sender script is also complete. We start the sender script, which automatically starts the receiver script. After a short time, the data is completely replicated to SQL Azure. To check the correct transfer of the data, we determine the number of records and add up two numeric fields. Then we do the same in the target database. The sums in both tables are identical. The data was transferred correctly. Now for Realtime. We create a script called Realtime Send in our to Azure folder. The input type is DB2 logreg. It's a real-time processing, and we select the DB2 database. The output should not be processed and is sent to another node as it is. We select a node and create a new script on it, just like we did for the bulk transfer. Again, the input data comes from a remote node. This time we specify the data type, which is DB2 log records. And they come from a DB2 mainframe file. We choose the DB2 database. Again, the output should be written into the target specified in the repository. We use restart files to be able to resume without data loss in the case of an interruption of the replication. Both scripts are complete now, and we close the windows. Now we start our replication task, which consistently synchronizes from DB2 to SQL Azure. Sender and receiver are started and communicate with each other. We delete a few records to generate change data in the DB2. Then we execute the logical validation again. Also in SQL Azure. The change data was transferred correctly. What did we see today? We recreated an existing table in SQL Azure, transferred data from COS DB2 to Microsoft Azure, and executed a real-time replication of DB2 changes to SQL Azure. Thank you for your attention.